Saturday, the 15th of August. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. We open with the stabbing of an IDF soldier at the Ofer checkpoint this morning that left him lightly wounded. The attack occurred along Highway 443 in the Binyamin region west of Ramallah. The Palestinian assailant, identified as a resident of the Beit Anan village, first asked the Artillery Corps soldier for water and attacked him after he returned with a bottle. Another soldier then shot the terrorist in the shoulder, and he was captured. Both he and the wounded soldier were taken for medical treatment at the Shar Tzedek Hospital in Jerusalem. This was the latest in a series of attacks on Israeli soldiers and civilians in the West Bank. Earlier this week, a 26-year-old was stabbed and moderately wounded while filling the tank of his car at a gas station not far away along the same highway. Just days earlier, 2 soldiers were seriously hurt when a Palestinian rammed his vehicle into them and another soldier during their patrol of the northern West Bank. And in related news, there were violent clashes in the Palestinian town of Silwad last night. Troops and border police responded with the firing of rubber bullets and other crowd dispersal methods after security forces operating in the area came under attack of dozens of rock throwers. 9 Palestinians were wounded in the incident. The condition of Palestinian hunger-striking security prisoner Mohammed Alan has apparently stabilized. The 31-year-old member of the Islamic Jihad terror organization lost consciousness at the Barzilai Medical Center in Ashkelon yesterday, where he was hospitalized last week. Today marks the 60th day of his refusal to eat food. His supporters have been demonstrating outside the hospital against the possibility that he might be force-fed in the wake of a law passed by the Knesset last month authorizing the administration of nutrition to prisoners against their will in efforts to save lives. Security forces have raised the level of alert amid concern over the potential outbreak of violence if Alan's condition deteriorates. A hospital official gave an update on his condition amid a call from Joint Arab List member of Knesset Ahmed Tibi for Alan's release from custody. We'll try to bring that to you later. In riots against the opening of the Yes Planet Cinema in Jerusalem, hundreds of ultra-Orthodox Jewish demonstrators clashed with police last night against the complex being opened and operating on Shabbat. There were 2 separate protests in the religious neighborhoods of Mea Shearim and the other right here in Romema. The demonstrators hurled rocks at security forces, blocked traffic, and broke the windows of a security post belonging to our own network, the Israel Broadcast Authority. The clashes took place far away from the actual location of the 16-screen complex at the Sharover Promenade in the mixed Jewish-Arab neighborhood of Abu Tor, which remained peaceful. Additional demonstrations are, however, expected to resume later this evening following vows from the demonstrators to stop what they consider to be a plague-damaging observance of the Holy Sabbath. Much of the current strain in relations between Washington and Jerusalem is the nuclear deal with Tehran, which Israel's ambassador to the U.S., Ron Dermer, discussed with CNN's Fareed Zakaria. We're having some technical difficulties, apparently, and we'll try to bring that to you later in this broadcast. Now turning to Havana, where U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry attended a ceremony with the raising of the Stars and Stripes at the opening of an American embassy in Cuba for the first time in 54 years. While Washington's new policy of engagement is considered by supporters to be a symbolically charged victory for the Obama administration, Cuban-American Republican presidential contender Marco Rubio has already announced that if elected, he would reverse the decision his first day in office. The Florida senator is arguing that such a move grants international legitimacy to the government of Raul Castro, as well as greater resources to repress its own citizens. Rubio then made a connection between his opposition to Obama's Cuban policy and his criticism of the Iranian nuclear deal.
It is ironic that the same president who visited a U.S. prison to talk about inequities in our own criminal justice system is silent about the fact that minor offenses in Iran and Cuba are punishable by indefinite detention, torture, or even death, and that these offenses often include nothing more than speaking out with the wrong political opinion. Instead of focusing his criticism on these illegitimate governments, the president has chosen to attack opponents of his policies here at home, going so far as to demonize critics of the Iran policy as, quote, lobbyists with money and warmongers. And he has criticized those who are opposed to his Cuba policy as, quote, practitioners of ethnic politics. This is shameful, derogatory rhetoric, and it should have no place in our democracy, especially from our president.
We now bring you the interview that Israel's ambassador to the U.S., Ron Dermer, gave to CNN's Fareed Zakaria.
First of all, the Prime Minister of Israel and the head of the coalition agree that this is a very bad deal that endangers Israel's security. As to your question about the U.S.-Israel relationship, there's no question that this is the most important relationship in the world. And we are not eager in any way to have to be at odds on the most important foreign policy priority of the President of the United States. That's a big deal. But guess what else is a big deal? The survival of the State of Israel is a big deal. And we believe that this deal threatens the survival of Israel. So even with our best of friends, we are making our case. We've made it to President Obama. We've made it for a long time. And now we are making it to all those senators and congressmen who will ultimately decide the fate of this deal in Congress. And we are telling them that this is a bad deal that endangers Israel's security. I want to be clear about something. When the President of the United States and Secretary of State, John Kerry, when they say they believe this deal is better for America and better for Israel, I have no doubt that they're being sincere. We just disagree with their judgment. We think this deal will endanger Israel's security. And in Israel, this view is shared by the Prime Minister, by the head of the opposition, by 30 out of 33 members of our Foreign Affairs Defense Committee. Moses didn't have those kind of numbers. And the people of Israel...
Though there are, the former head of Mossad, for example, disagrees.
We're a Jewish state. There are a lot of opinions, and we are a democracy. We are not unanimous on anything.
Let me ask you about these timelines. For 20 years, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that Iran is 2 to 3 years away from a bomb. Now, nobody I know in Mossad, in the U.S. intelligence, believes that counterintelligence efforts have done more than delay Iran by a year or two. So why has he been wrong for 20 years about Iran? Is it possible that you don't completely understand Iran?
Well, look, I think that the Prime Minister of Israel understands Iran better than almost any leader in the world, because he's been focusing on this issue for 20 years.
Now, but he's been predicting that in 2 years they're going to get the bomb 20 years ago.
Get the facts, look at exactly what he said. I've been with the Prime Minister for 15 years, so I know exactly what he said over those 15 years. I can't account for the 5 years before. The Prime Minister has said that they were a certain period, it could be 2 years, it could be 4 years away from getting a bomb. Right. And I guarantee you, Fareed, had the United States and Israel done nothing over the last 15 years, they would have had a bomb maybe 10 years ago. But Iran, the United States and Israel have worked together to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear power, and we should continue to work together to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapons capability. This deal closes the nuclear file, not by blocking Iran's path to the bomb, but by ceding to them a nuclear weapons capability and a nuclear arsenal, at best delaying it for a few years.
Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif is meanwhile continuing his mission of diplomacy to foreign capitals in efforts to capitalize on Tehran's standing amid international support for the July 14th pact. And while in New Delhi, he addressed the need to confront the Islamic State.
ISIS is a common threat. People should deal with ISIS not as an opportunity. Unfortunately, some of our friends in the region see ISIS, or have seen in the past, ISIS or Daesh as an opportunity for tactical gains. I think that has to change. I think they have to realize that by cooperation, nobody will lose.
Turning to the Syrian civil war, and Russian leaders are not committed to keeping Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in power, but are instead focused on the need to preserve the country's territorial integrity. This, according to the president of Syria's main opposition group, Khaled Khoja, of the Syrian National Coalition. After holding talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow, Khoja said that even though discussion did not include possible candidates for a future transitional government, neither Assad nor his top lieutenants can play any role in the interim authority. It isn't clear whether the statements signal a shift in Russia's stance or may just reflect an attempt by Moscow to garner support from the Syrian opposition to advance its own campaign to help mediate the conflict. Lavrov's meeting with his Saudi counterpart earlier this week highlighted sharp ongoing differences over Assad's fate. While Moscow wants to see the inclusion of Syrian government troops in the coalition fighting Islamic State extremists, Saudi Foreign Minister Adel al-Jubair rejected any involvement by Assad. The Kremlin has been a key backer of the Assad regime throughout the conflict that has now dragged on for more than 4 years, claiming the lives of at least 250,000 people and forcing more than 4 million others to become refugees. Meanwhile, in neighboring Turkey, 6 people were killed and 8 were wounded in clashes between government soldiers and Kurdish gunmen in the southwest. Fighting between the military and the outlawed PKK insurgents has erupted almost every day this past month after Ankara resumed airstrikes on their camps in northern Iraq in what it calls a synchronized war on terror. The government of President Tayyip Recep Erdogan says that the government also targets the Islamic State in Syria, although it has so far focused on the PKK, raising suspicions among the country's Kurdish community that its main purpose is to check their territorial ambitions instead of routing the Islamic extremists. Here at home, police protection has begun for 2 prominent Orthodox rabbis following threats from religious extremists. Rabbi Nahum Rabinovich and David Stav formed an alternative court to help immigrants in the country, particularly from the former Soviet Union, become Jewish in a challenge to the monopoly held on the conversion process by the chief rabbinate. The 2 launched their initiative just 1 month after the government repealed a landmark conversion reform law that had been passed by the previous government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Rabbi Stav explained the idea behind the plan to Arutz Sheva.
The initiative basically wants to confront with the challenge of assimilation in Israel. We have almost 100,000 kids that have to be converted. We have here every year more than 4,500 kids that are born and less than 2,000 converts a year. These kids, these minors, are involved in the Israeli society. They go to Jewish schools, they go to the university, they serve together with us in the army, and they will have no other choice but to get married to their Israeli colleagues. And if we want to prevent a high percentage of intermarriage among these youngsters, the only way is what Rav Rabinovich is doing with such a courage and such a wisdom, and that's his initiative to run these rabbinic courts.
Well, what's the problem basically with the chief rabbinate as it is today, the attitude today towards these conversions?
First of all, the official policy of the chief rabbinate is not to allow kids, even those who study in observant schools, in Mamlechti Dati schools, not to enable them to convert if their parents are not observant or the mother is not converting, despite the fact that they commit themselves and they guarantee to enable the kid to grow up in an observant environment. That's the main problem. There are other challenges regarding the issue of the approach to the converts. Are you suspicious on a constant basis, or do you trust them basically? Do you try to encourage them to convert? Are you embracing them, or God forbid, vice versa? That's the main challenge. As the facts are that we have less than 2,000 converts. I think that this number says everything.
Now, how do you answer the claims according to which this is an opening for any organization, any sector in the Jewish society to open their own conversion court?
First of all, they are converting already, and it's not recognized today in Israel. They apply to the Supreme Court. There are several applications to the Supreme Court about recognizing Haredi conversions and Reform conversions. It seems to be that the Supreme Court will approve it, all of these conversions, so it's not something to blame us. It's something that is going to be done without us and without any connection to us.
As efforts to combat the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel gather strength, Jewish Agency Chairman Natan Sharansky spoke to IBA's Eli Wogelenter about how this coming academic year his organization will be helping to fight the campaign on campuses around the world.
First of September is coming. The universities start working, and we accept continuation of the huge campaign of huge anti-Israel campaign, demonization of Israel, delegitimization, attacks, and new resolutions about boycotting Israel. We sent this year 80 Israeli fellows on the campuses in the United States of America. A few years ago, there were 15. It's the most quickly developing program of Jewish Agency. And the local branches of Hillel ask us more and more and more. In fact, last year was the first year when we had special miluim, when we were asked to send those of our Israeli fellows who were in the previous years, if they'll agree to go for 2, 3, 4 weeks to organize resistance to anti-Israeli campaigns on the campuses, and we did it. Just in these days, our new generation of Israeli fellows, young Jews who after their army first degree go for 1 or 2 or 3 years to spend time in strengthening connection of Jews on the campuses with Israel, to have more of Israel on the campus, to have more young Jews coming to Israel on different programs. Just in these days, they are on a special seminar in St. Louis, together with Hillel and other organizations, going through kind of short training before going to this battle, very important battle for the future of Jewish people.
What's the hardest part of that battle, and do you feel that you're winning that fight?
No, the hardest part is that many young Jews, many liberal young Jews in America feel themselves embarrassed even to speak about their connection with Israel and with Jewish people. And we have to change that atmosphere and to give them a feeling that they have no reason to be embarrassed. They have all the reason to be very proud of their connection to Israel, the leading power in promoting democracy, freedom, human rights, justice, and of course guaranteeing the future for Jewish people.
Among the many commemorative events around the world this weekend marking the end of the Second World War, here's one that will warm everyone's hearts. Hundreds of couples gathered at Times Square in New York City yesterday to celebrate the anniversary of the victory over Japan by making their own recreations of the iconic photograph of a sailor kissing a nurse on VJ Day 7 decades ago. Prussian-born American-Jewish photographer Alfred Eisenstadt snapped the famous picture, which captured the excitement of Tokyo's surrender that brought an end to the deadliest conflict in human history. The event was organized by the nonprofit organization called Keep the Spirit of 45 Alive that is dedicated to inspiring young people with the lessons of those from that era known as the Greatest Generation. Tomorrow marks the 38th anniversary since the death of King and rock and roll Elvis Presley. Here in the Holy Land, his music and his memory live on, as we see in this report from IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan.
Just off the Tel Aviv-Jerusalem highway, the songs of the King of Rock and Roll spill out of a truck stop restaurant as a crowd gathered today on the eve of the 38th anniversary of Elvis's death.
For me, Elvis never died. You know, I saw him every day on the video. You see so many pictures. I heard his voice all the day. So for me, he's alive. He's with us all the day, all the time.
Yuri has turned his restaurant into a shrine to the king. Many come to the Elvis Inn for the food, but there are those who come to be photographed next to the 3-meter-high statue of Elvis that rises out of the parking lot. And one shelf down from the souvenir camels and olive oil and Holy Land keychains are Elvis memorabilia.
Elvis is born in America, but Elvis is for everyone, for all over the world. Elvis is an icon for all the people in the world. Okay.
There was a time when a dozen or more Elvis impersonators would converge on the Elvis Inn on this day in August, but their numbers are fading.
One day in school, they told me, "Man, you just sound like Elvis. You got to do something with the voice, you know, with the talent of yours. Go to a talent show in the school, you know. There's a talent show. Go there, and they'll like you for sure." I said, "No, everybody's gonna laugh at me. No." I said, "No, go for it." No, I said, all right, I will try. And I tried. And then scream, Elvis. I did one song I did. And the next time I do 2 songs.
Just like a willow, we will cry in an ocean. If we lost you and see the ocean. You're less excited. beside me. Let your arms invite me.
Elvis Presley is not just for Americans. The whole world loves him. And here, there's a shrine to Elvis Presley built in Nave Elan. It's called the Elvis Inn. And every year, on this date, people gather to hear his music and to remember the king of rock and roll. From Nave Elan, this is Ariel O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Well, the IBA weather team says get ready, because here it comes. The heat wave should hit its peak tomorrow, with another rise in temperatures to extremely hot and dry shoroff conditions in all regions, accompanied by strong winds. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'll be back at the same time, same channel. Hope to see you then. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a very good week, and shalom from Jerusalem.